Another poll shows 59% of voters support the 70% income tax rate proposed by Cortez.
The land of Arcadia.
Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And today, the economic ideology of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm a little new to this phenomenon that I've been hearing quite about that's going around. Although it was interesting because Jim Rickards had a post here, recipe for massive government spending. Certainly, if there's one thing the government can get right, it is that. But interesting here, some of the actual things that he mentions where, again, I guess I'm taking Jim's word for it. I don't know if these polls are actually accurate or not, although stunning in their own right and worth commenting, giggling about, because you can see down here, another poll shows 59% of voters support the 70% income tax rate proposed by Cortez. Politicians go where the votes are. Well, that part we agree with. And right now the votes are in favor of much higher taxes. I mean, goodness is... I sometimes wonder if I'm still living in America. Again, I know this is, I was actually talking with a friend yesterday about the democratic policies of America, which keep in mind that when the Constitution was written and the US was created, it was very clearly created not to be a democracy, but rather to be a republic, because the problem with democracy is essentially if you have 51% of the people vote for anything that they want to do to the other 49%, that sets a scary precedent. And again, you know, you like to think all people are acting with good intention, although then you can turn on CNN and watch anything out of Washington for a few minutes, realize that's not the case. But aside from that, before I ruffle anyone's feathers, I mean, from the economic perspective, businesses are going to go where the conditions are most favorable to capital. So, and that does trickle down, because let's say you have the guy who has a $100 million company, has hired a lot of people and has created jobs, you know, and they're paying probably a high tax rate already. Now, if you're saying we're going to raise that to 70%, well, I mean, certainly, especially when there are different jurisdictions where there are much lower tax rates, anyone that has the flexibility to move their business, that's why things are going abroad. It's not this idea that people don't like Americans or the foreign soil is better, but as a business owner, and I've worked for corporations and then gone and done my own thing, so that's given me a lot of respect and appreciation for the challenges that go into running a business, which there's no guarantee of success, so you're putting your capital at risk or borrowing capital, and the more someone is going to take of that versus if you have the option. I mean, let's say you have two countries that you like equally and you're not tied to a certain place. One has a 70% tax rate and one has a 10% tax rate. What do you think most people are going to choose? And of course, who really loses out in addition to that are the people, the jobs that are created, the opportunities that are created from that business quickly disappear because it just becomes incredibly hard to do so. And just to be clear, I'm wondering, maybe we'll have comments on this one already, but the point here is not to advocate not helping people. In fact, most of the successful businessmen that I know personally are incredibly generous and do a lot of public service, and it's something that I admire and respect and have emulated in my own life. So, in place, when you have this money taxed, look at what the government is doing with it. We're not talking about tax money that's making life better or easier. I mean, it's building tanks that we're using to go and agitate foreign countries. All this stuff the government spends and wastes money on, things that aren't productive And I mean, the spending is so out of control that I mean, we're still setting record deficits. It's crossed 22 trillion in debt. Not even any talks of any cuts. So, I mean, in that democratic ideal, and I'm not trying to pick sides versus the Democrats or Republicans. I think both are different divisions of the same softball team. But you know, the idea that we're paying tax to make the world better and help the homeless people. Let's call this anecdotal, though I remember a couple of these guys who have done studies where it's like any of the government assistance, usually it's like 10%, 10 cents out of the dollar that actually gets to the people who are in need. I forget, there are a couple guys who used to say the old foreign aid is taking money from poor people in rich countries and giving it to rich people in poor countries. I believe Jim Rogers wrote about that in a couple of his books quite a bit. I'm sure if you go search out, you can find that. Whether you believe it or not, that's fine. That's what I've come to believe. And then here again, you see a little bit higher up, recent polls show 74% of registered voters support a 2% annual wealth tax on those with 50 million of assets and a 3% tax on those with $1 billion of assets. So if my math is correct here, that means if you have a company and you've earned $50 million, the government is now just taking $1 million of that per year, which again, when you wonder why we're a decade later, money printing, QE, and the economy is still not recovering, that the monetary policy in conjunction with the fiscal policy and the tax policy and the political policy, these things all add up. So I'm not going to be voting for Alexandria Cortez. Leave your comments. Let me know what you think. I'm ready to hear it. But again, I'm not trying to, poke fun or make anyone feel bad. And by all means, I think it's very important for us to help each other out and be a good neighbor and take care of each other when we can. Yet, from an economic standpoint, all doctrine or perspective or opinion aside, from an economic standpoint, these policies would be just as disastrous here as they have been in France. So again, we'll see what will happen. But with that said, hit the subscribe button. I will see you again soon. Thanks.